Good afternoon and welcome to the latest in our series of live careers webinars brought to you by the HOP platform. So the HOP platform stands for the Hertfordshire Opportunities Portal. It is a site specifically designed for any young people and students in Hertfordshire who would like to find out more information about a whole variety of careers, particularly those that are relevant within the county of Hertfordshire. So on your screen at the moment, you should see details of our website and our social media handles. Now, this webinar will give you the opportunity to hear directly from people who are doing jobs that quite possibly are the ones that you want to do in a few years' time. So between Ben, Chris, Lucy and Holly, they are going to share their experiences with you from their career in the performing arts industry, which is a very, very exciting one and possibly one that you've dreamt about being part of for a very long time. So the purpose of this webinar will be to explain to you what do we mean by the performing arts industry. We will discuss the range of different careers that are available within it, how you can access entry routes into this industry, and we'll also discuss what the demand is for different roles within the industry as well. And therefore we've got a variety of people with you today who cover a range of different roles within it. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves to you. Then I'll come back and I'll tell you a little bit more about the format of the session today. So good afternoon, Ben. Tell us a little bit more about you, please.
Hi, I'm Ben. Thank you for having me today, Gareth. I am the CEO of MPAA, which is a performing arts now university course in Bushy, and I kind of wear many hats throughout the day. My career in the performing arts has been quite varied. So I started out as a performer, and then I went on to work for the Royal Academy of Music as one of the people running the musical theatre course. I then dipped in and out of performing in shows such as Wicked. I did backing vocals for Elton John, a film for BBC4, and a few other performing roles. And then I was lucky enough to work as an assistant to theatre producer Sir Cameron Mackintosh for 4 years. And there I was very privileged to work on shows such as Les Mis, Miss Saigon, Phantom, etc. And then after leaving there, I was part of the casting team for the Queen's 90th birthday. And then I also now split my time between London and New York, working for the choreographer of Hamilton, the musical, Andy Blankenbuehler, as well as for the New York office for Cameron Mackintosh Limited, as well as Momentum PAA. So, yeah. That's
so you got some experiences that we can draw on today, Ben, by the sounds of it.
I hope so.
I'm sure you. Lucy, good afternoon. Tell us a little bit more about you, please.
Hello, thank you so much for welcoming me. And I think I've got a slightly unusual career in the performing arts that I think many young people probably wouldn't necessarily even have on their radar at the moment is a job. So I'm a psychologist who specialises in performing artists, so supporting performing artists. I'm currently working freelance and that's a very recent shift for me. I've previously been working in higher education as a psychology lecturer and also in the past as a dance lecturer, but now currently just working freelance across a variety of performing arts schools, ballet schools, teaching various aspects around dance psychology. In some cases that's on the curriculum of various kind of degree courses and higher education courses, but also doing freelance work with performing artists, so supporting them with their psychological well-being. One of those places is MPAA with Ben, where we're embedding performance psychology into the degree program, so supporting performers to really think about their psychological well-being and mental health. And I'm also working with a number of other schools like Central School of Ballet and Rambert School of Ballet and Contemporary Dance. So that's kind of my background was more in psychology. So my education, which I'm sure I'll explain a bit more about later, was initially in psychology and then in dance science. So I don't have the traditional route into the performing arts that maybe my colleagues do on the call.
Sure, thank you. I mean, that's a really fascinating journey that you've been on, and we'll explore that a little bit further. Good afternoon, Chris.
Hello, everybody, and welcome.
Afternoon.
So I'm Chris.
Tell us more about you, Chris.
Okay, I will do. I'm Chris Boone. I'm the technical director and production manager for Dalfont Mackintosh theatres and Cameron McIntosh. So I started off in a small theatre at the Lyceum in Crewe, where I started on the follow spot as an operator. So that's a big light at the back, which follows the people around. And then my career from there, working no formal training, just told off a lot and learnt that way. So just shouted at by a lot of people, and worked my way up there as an assistant stage manager, and then from there I went on tour. So toured all around the UK and all around Europe with different theatre shows for about 10 years. And then I came to London for 6 weeks to work on Mary Poppins. And 17 years later, I haven't left. So I'm like Dick Whittington. I came here to find my fortune. Unfortunately, I still haven't found it, so I'm still working. So yeah, so I'm. If you imagine, I'm like from a technical point of view, I'm like the ringmaster of a circus show. And I've got lots of spinning plates of all different departments, keeping those all in the air on a nightly basis. So that's what I do.
Thank you very much, Chris. And Holly says you're a performer, teacher, and choreographer, but I don't know in which order. So tell us a little bit more about you.
Thanks, Gary. Yes, so I am a performer, teacher and choreographer. My background was in musical theatre training. I trained at musical theatre college. When I graduated, I wanted to pursue more of the commercial and hip hop dance route. So I was lucky enough to join a company that some of you who are studying GCSE dance might know. The company is called Boy Blue Entertainment, and we studied a lot of different hip hop and commercial styles under them. And then I decided to branch out a little bit more, and I wanted to teach. And luckily, one of the places that I teach at now is MPAA, alongside Ben and working with Lucy as well, where I teach a variety of styles from commercial, hip hop, jazz, and I choreograph things on the side. So when we're working on musicals and shows, I get to do that. So yeah, it's quite a broad spectrum of what I get to do on a day-to-day.
Thank you. And Holly, we should also add in that you're a local girl as well, aren't you? You are born and bred in Hertfordshire.
I'm a bushy median, I think we used to call ourselves.
Fantastic. So thank you for the introductions. Before we go on, let me just explain the format of the webinar. So for those of you that are watching this session live at the moment, so it's Thursday afternoon at the moment, firstly, well done for taking the time out of your day, having got home from school to join in this webinar. By joining this session live, it gives you the opportunity to hear, not just to hear from our panelists today, but you can also interact with them as well. So the way that you do that is on your dashboard, you should see there's a questions tab. If you click on the questions tab and open it out, it will generate a text box. In there, you can type in a question and that will come straight through to me. So it won't be visible to anybody else in the audience. It'll be visible to me, and then I can direct it to the most appropriate panelist, or probably panelists. So I'm sure there'll be more than one opinion on any questions that you got. So please do make the most of this opportunity at the moment to put these questions to our panelists. If you're watching this back as a recording, so it will be available on our YouTube channel on the HOT platform probably from tomorrow morning. You of course can't ask any questions directly to our panelists, but we will open the comments section on the YouTube. So if you did want to ask any questions, you could type them in there, and then we will make sure that we refer them back to the panelists at a later point. So this really is your opportunity to get those questions. So you can start submitting your questions now. We've got some sort of set criteria that we'll ask first of all, based on the questions you put in your registration. So thank you very much for those of you that did add questions in there. But keep your live questions coming in now, and we'll make sure that we get them all done before we sign off at about 5 o'clock. So let's move on to the first section of questions that we're going to ask today. And this is really just to set the scene for what we mean by performing arts. So, well, Ben, I'm going to throw this one at you. It's a bit of a curveball, but could you just explain, what does the performing arts industry actually encompass?
I think the performing arts industry is really kind of wide in its reach, because if we think of, let's say, a stage show, for example, what we can see when we're a paying audience member are the performers on stage. But behind that performance, behind those 30, 40 people who are doing a show every night, is an army of people that are involved in, say, ticketing, technical side, producing, also the theatre itself, the theatre management, box office, marketing, and even more so from that is the training of those performers, the training of those technical people, and all the people around them. So there's a lot of career in arts management, a lot of careers in the education of artists and stage managers, and also of recent a producers program organized by the Society of London Theatre. So as we have seen now in lockdown, how important the arts are and how many roles are out there, both on a freelance level and also on an employed level, the arts provides a very big part of careers today. And that's just theatre. And then there's the film industry, there's the music industry. We're seeing a lot of theatre shows and musicals become films as well. But also, like just in Hertfordshire, there's Leavesden Studios, Warner Brothers Studios, and all of the employment that goes on and the careers that are possible there from a technical point of view, from an artistic point of view. So yeah, have I forgotten anything, guys?
I think
Yeah.
so.
Okay, thank you, Ben. That's a really good start. So let me start with you, Lucy. What's a day in the life for you then? What does an average day look like?
Yeah, that's a really tricky one to answer, because I think every day is really different for me, which is probably why I'm really fulfilled by the work that I get to do. But if I kind of look at a week and what I could be doing in any given day, there's, for me as a scientist and a psychologist, a really important part of what I'm doing is research. So ensuring that any decision that's made about the health and well-being of performers is kind of based on evidence and based on the forefront of research. So I spend a lot of time reading, engaging with kind of new publications and learning a lot. There's an awful lot of continued learning and continued development for me, but also conducting my own research as well. So I'm a researcher too. That's probably the less juicy and exciting part of it. But the average day also includes working a lot with people as well. So there's a lot of interaction with people, whether that's speaking with people like Ben, understanding what the demands are of the performing arts, and helping people like Ben to kind of understand what science can bring to that, but also a lot of education as well. So I spend a lot of time talking to performers, I guess learning from them as well. Most days I'm doing some kind of education of performing artists, helping them to understand about the role of mental health and empowering them. So every day is really different for me. It's quite often a surprise. I often don't really know what's coming. So I think you need to be quite flexible, quite adaptable, quite quick to kind of respond to things that come up. Yeah, so that's kind of my average week, but certainly a lot of two key characteristics for me: a lot of learning and committing to kind of developing and growing, but secondly a lot of time working with people and that really kind of rewarding interaction with people.
Sure. And then Lucy, it's a question we asked, or I asked you yesterday in preparation for this. Do you see yourself as a dancer first and then a psychologist, or are you a psychologist and then a dancer?
That's a really great question. I mean, I'd say my love affair with the performing arts started long before it did with psychology. So I was someone that danced from 2 years old, really kind of classic story of mum taking me to the village hall. And that was a part of my life and has been a part of my life for a much longer period of time. Maybe when I was studying psychology, just because of where things were at in my life personally, people didn't necessarily see me as a dancer. But I am definitely a kind of a dancer first who's become a psychologist. And it is my kind of relationship with dance and my experiences of dance that took me to psychology and wanted me to, you know, I felt this desire to unpack my experiences and understand how to help people because of dance rather than around the other way. I've often wondered, would I even be in psychology if I didn't have this kind of love of dance and love of the performing arts? So I certainly see myself as wanting to be in the performing arts more than I do in psychology, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you. Holly, when you, as a dancer, teacher and a choreographer, what's an average day look like for you then?
Again, as Lucy said, every day can be quite different, but just as an overview, so yeah, teaching at performing arts colleges, a lot of their timetable runs during the day. So I might be teaching from 8:30, running warm-ups for students before they start their college day, then various technical classes throughout the day. And then another really big part of being a performer on top of that is obviously investing in yourself and your training. So then finding sort of evening classes that, I mean, there are so many, lots of different studios that are run, but making sure that you're investing in your own training and attending classes to sort of keep in the loop and make sure that you're keeping current, and then obviously, you know, being able to work with different people. And then sort of on top of that, when you're part of the company, attending evening rehearsals or daytime rehearsals for company work and things like that. So it's quite varied from day to day, but it's sort of a lot of teaching and then a lot of self-investment in the time that you have off.
Sure, thank you. Chris, I'm not going to let you get away with saying every day is different, so I'm going to ask you a very direct question. What have you done today?
What have I done today? Oh, it's a bit of a mixture because it's a bit of a unique situation at the moment because we have 8 theatres, but unfortunately because of COVID, we only have 1 performing at the moment. We have the Les Mis concert. But what's great at the moment is we're doing a huge recruitment drive. So I've had lots of interviews today. I've had a COVID test today. Yeah, mainly interviews today, looking at some budgets and looking at, we are starting a apprenticeship scheme. So I had meetings about the recruitment and regarding the apprenticeship scheme. So yeah, that's what I've been doing today. Yesterday was very different.
Okay, and tomorrow different still, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't do much on a Friday, to be honest. Not worth starting much on a Friday, so wait for the weekend.
Ben, well, I mean, let me ask you that same direct question. What does tomorrow look like for you then? Yeah, Ben. Yeah.
Is it me?
Yes,
it,
please.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
tomorrow.
yes.
Tomorrow, I've got a day where I'm going to go and meet the resident choreographer on Hamilton at the Victoria Palace Theatre, because they're doing some preparation for the new resident choreographer there. So I'll do that in the morning, and then I will have a meeting with Lucy. We have a strategy sort of day where we will be planning what's next year is coming along. We're in the middle of a musical called Oklahoma, so I will be having some meetings about costumes and technical things to do with that. We also did some auditions today for intake in September, so we'll be looking at outcomes on that and making sure that the students get that. We're also redesigning a new uniform, so there are some samples that need to be approved tomorrow, so that will be fine. And then as the evening comes along, my work in America will start. As I said, Hamilton, the musical, started its first day of rehearsals yesterday, so there'll be some work to do around that. So that's really my day tomorrow.
Okay, very, very busy schedules for all of you, quite clearly, and very varied as well. Ben, let me ask you this question. Perhaps you can answer this on behalf of everyone, just to try and save us a bit of time. How many people in the industry are self-employed, and how many are contracted staff?
I think there's a good balance of people. So if you look at the cross section here, like I'm self-employed, Holly is self-employed too, as far as I know, and Lucy, I don't know whether you were employed and now you're self-employed. Is that correct? And Chris, you're employed, right?
I'm employed, yeah.
Yeah.
But there is people who do my role who are self-employed as well.
Yeah, so I think most people would be self-employed in terms of the industry, but when you're part of a company or part of a big production house, then you'll probably be employed and on the payroll, and yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll explore that more, because I think that's a really important thing to take away from this session about what the employment status is for a lot of people within the industry. Holly, what are the most enjoyable aspects of the role for you?
When I first left college, I didn't actually envisage myself as a teacher. I just purely wanted to perform. And then when I started teaching and working with individual people, I found that was sort of where my passion lied. So working with new people every day, and working with students and sort of seeing their growth throughout, you know, on a performing arts course, usually a 3-year long stint, is probably one of the favourite parts sort of about what I do. And then with my performing hat on, being able to actually perform, especially at the moment, to a live audience where people can see you dancing or showcasing your skills, is also, it's such a buzz. It's an amazing feeling.
Sure. And Lucy, same question for you. What do you enjoy most about your role?
Yeah, I'd say there's a few things, but I think for me, I never really wanted to be a performer. It just didn't really suit what me as a person. It wasn't really my kind of my dream particularly. So for me, I love being able to watch other people where that is their dream, seeing that happen, but also playing a part in helping them to achieve that, and knowing that those people who are so focused and have committed so much will achieve and be healthy because of the work that I'm doing with them. So I think there's that, but I also think I've always really enjoyed learning, and I guess I was always quite a nerdy person and still am, but for me, to find that perfect kind of blend between the performing arts that I love and I find like so fulfilling on the creative level, to be able to mix that with my kind of intellectual curiosity. I just kind of every day count my blessings that I found this kind of ideal blend of the things that make me me. And I think that it's really important to value that kind of intellectual side of the performing arts as well, and see it in that way, that it's, you know, it's a subject where there's so much rich information and so much to learn, and so much to kind of study about it as well. So that's what I love about it.
Can I just take you back to something you said there, Lucy? I think you said that performing isn't necessarily the thing that you really enjoy about it. Is that something that's changed over time? And you said you were the sort of stereotypical, you know, 2-year-old child who was taken to the local village hall. So clearly performing was something that you really, really enjoyed doing. But was there a point when you thought, well, actually, maybe the performing side of it isn't actually quite my cup of tea?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think often if you're quite good at dance as a child, you're exposed to lots of performance, but not everybody enjoys it, which is kind of how I've come round to the career that I've got, of this kind of, I suppose I had this complex relationship with performing, that I loved dancing and studying it, but I didn't necessarily want to go out there and perform. And I think probably when I was younger, maybe we weren't really exposed to the idea that there were other jobs in the performing arts that didn't mean that you had to be a performer. And I think that's one really important message that I want to share with people, is it's not wasted if you don't become a performer or if you don't want to perform. Because I think there is often this kind of inherent thing that if you are in the performing arts, or if you put a child in the performing arts, that that's the only possible thing that they could do. For me, it just didn't really align with my personality. It just wasn't really what I wanted, but I would not change a single thing about that childhood investment and everything that I kind of learned and gained from it. It just took me in a very different direction to what you might traditionally think that a child is going to do when you take them to their first ballet class. But yeah, I'm really happy with how it all panned out for me.
Sure. I'm really interested in this, but can you remember what age you were when you had that realization?
I think it was probably always there. I have a sister who's a little bit older, and she has gone on to kind of dance school and to be a dancer and a teacher. And I think it was always kind of like she was going to be the one that was more confident and was better suited to something like that. So I think I probably always knew it. And because I had quite complex experiences of being injured when I was a teenager as well, that probably consolidated it for me. Which is probably like potentially the experience that some people on this call might be going through, that they've already started to get injuries or kind of doubts about, is their body equipped for it. So I think that all consolidated it. But I definitely decided, I think by the time I was about 16, and I actually remember when I was doing my A-levels and studying psychology, that there was even kind of at that early age, there was this kind of studies written in the textbooks that I was reading about dancers. So straight away I was like, that is what I want to do. Like I knew that was my thing, to combine the two. So yeah, I think I'm glad I realized quite early, because it enabled me to get on the right pathway when I went to university, to know what I wanted to do and kind of carve it out from there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Chris, let me come to you. What do you enjoy most about your role?
I think, you know, we start off with a blank canvas. The theatre's all dark, you know, and then we start loading in the set and all the scenery and all the lights and all, you know, and bringing that all together. Then the rehearsals start, and then the audience arrive, and just bringing all those different elements together to that final, you know, that final result of your opening night show. I'm very fortunate. Still to this day, I don't wake up in the morning and think I've got to go to work. It's a way of life for me, which is I'm very lucky in that way. I don't get to a Sunday afternoon thinking, oh, I've got to go back to work on Monday. So it's challenging, but it's very enjoyable. So I think, and the mixture of people, I think the mixture of people you deal with on a day-to-day basis is fantastic and makes it very enjoyable.
Okay, thank you. Ben, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question, then I get other people's views on it. But what are the challenging aspects of working in this industry that you think maybe, you know, a 15-year-old wouldn't necessarily be aware of, that you think it's important that they do know?
I think the challenges are definitely that the work can be at times a little irregular. So you could do a show for 1 year, for example, and then have a gap of say 6-7 months until you book your next job. Or for example, you might be playing the lead in one show 1 year, and then the next year you're just not making that lead. So this kind of insecurity, and I think this lack of consistency could be a challenge. The other thing is that you leave school or a training environment with a group of people, and they all get their individual journey. So one person might again book a job straight away as soon as they leave college, and another person might need a year of auditioning to get that. So you have a team and you have a support network, but there are different levels at the same time of doing that. But for every job you don't get, there's a job that you do get. And I think that's the beautiful thing, is that what's for you doesn't pass you by.
Sure. Okay, that's a really nice answer. Thank you. Holly, perhaps let me just ask you that question, then we'll move on to the next section. What are the parts of your role that are quite challenging and perhaps you wouldn't have been aware of when you were 15 that you would like to have known now?
I think part of, as a performer, I think touching on what Ben said slightly, is that when you go to auditions, you never necessarily know what the panel are looking for. And sometimes you can sort of take a no or a rejection quite personally. But what I've learned over time and throughout my career is that a lot of the time when you don't quite book a job, it's not necessarily a personal thing. It's just that you might not fit the bill that somebody is looking for, and that it's not always a reflection on the talent that you have. But coming out of college and obviously wanting to do well is something that for a lot of performers, that's our sort of priority. So it's learning how to sort of deal with that rejection can sometimes be quite difficult, and that's something that maybe the 15-year-old me wasn't as prepared for as I would have liked to have been.
For sure. Okay, well, I'm sure there'll be some follow-up questions to that as well. Chris, I've just got to ask you, you said you've got what, 20 plus years experience in this. You talked about that moment when the lights go out and the show's about to start. How nerve-wracking is that from you? And is that something that dissipates over time, or are you just as anxious about the next show as you were about your very first one?
Oh, all shows, even when we do the simple shows, there's always something that can go wrong. I think one of the most nerve-wracking shows I've production managed is Mary Poppins, because you can't relax, and not to ruin it for anybody, you can't relax and right till the end of the show when Mary has flown over the audience, and then you can relax. But there's always something that can go wrong. How I could describe it is, you're sitting in the auditorium, and it's like being a passenger in a car where you've got no control. You know where you should be going, and you know what should be turning, and you know when the indicator should be coming on, but you've got no control. And that's why you have to support the team you've put into place, and have confidence in the team you've put into place to deliver it on a nightly basis.
Sure. I mean, just describe those feelings you have, though. So like kind of 2 minutes before you know the show's going to start, are you on really heightened anxiety at that point?
Yeah, it has its moments. You have to do a lot of deep breathing and stuff to get yourself through that, and and a little bit of luck. You do get. I would say you get calmer with a bit of age and experience, but I'm still as nervous now when production managing a show as when I started doing my first show. So yeah.
Sure. But I mean, I can imagine that things that for you have gone wrong or that don't quite follow the plan, no one in the audience will have seen a lot of those things, do they? So I bet you must be hypersensitive to it.
Oh yeah, it's very hard for me to go and watch a show without looking at the lighting, looking at the set, looking at the costumes, looking at the wigs and all those different bits and pieces. On the whole, most people in the audience wouldn't know if something goes wrong. We've had some great disasters where, everybody knows it's gone wrong, and, especially with social media now, and stuff where, and we sometimes do have technical issues with shows where we have to stop. A lot of the modern shows now are computerized scenery, so we call that automation, where you press a button and lots of things happen, and we all use computers, as you know. And some days you'll press the keyboard and things happen, and other days they don't, and you have to turn them off and turn them back on. And that happens with shows as well. We have a special name; it's called recycling. We'll recycle the racks. It just means they're going to turn them off and turn them back on, and 9 times out of 10 it solves the problem.
Sure. Okay. You've given away one of IT's greatest trade secrets there, Chris.
Oh yeah.
Right, let's just move the conversation on then. I can see there's some questions that are already coming through, and I want to give as much time to those as possible. So just thinking about entry routes that someone might want to take. So my now audience today, looking by the ages of the registrations, kind of anywhere between about year 8 and year 12, year 13. So start with you, Ben. Whilst someone's at school, so at mainstream school or college, are there any particular subjects, either at GCSE, A-level, BTEC, that you would really recommend someone wants to take if they want to get into the industry?
Yeah, I think I'm going to cover sort of myself and Holly's route, because we had a similar route into the performing arts. So what sort of subjects you might need? I mean, any subjects relating to the performing arts are always helpful. So GCSE dance or GCSE drama, A-level dance, A-level drama, that's also good. But also what I would say is any after school clubs, any local dance schools, stagecoach, that sort of thing. The more experience you can get in shows and in the genre, it's very good. If you wanted to get into somewhere like MPAA on the BA Honours course, like with any university course, you have a number of UCAS points, and those can be a mixture of your academic subjects and also your vocational subjects, which is very good. But most people will want to see you audition, and the best way to practice for that is really by doing your craft.
Sure. Okay. Lucy, for you, obviously, you've gone down a specialist route, and having a degree and then a master's is something that you've needed to go and do. If you were to go back now, I mean, just talk us through your A-level or what you did post 16, and would you have changed anything?
Mm-hmm. So I did obviously psychology A-level. That would be really fundamental if you want to go on to be a psychologist. That's probably a good starting place. And I actually did English and Spanish, so language based. At the school that I was at, there wasn't an option for dance A-level, and as I mentioned, at that time I was going through quite a significant injury, so at that point it was probably off the cards that I was going to study that. But I mean, despite the injury, I was still dancing outside of school, probably 6 days a week, going to festivals, competitions. I was also playing musical instruments, having singing lessons, going to drama lessons as well. So all of my kind of education around the performing arts was happening outside of school, but very, very intensely. So yeah, I mean, if you want to go into any of the sciences that exist in the performing arts, because it's really important to say that you could also, for example, train to be a physiotherapist that works with performing artists, or a strength and conditioning coach. I think getting that balance of bringing in a science at A-level would be really useful. And again, I think probably there aren't that many people out there talking about these roles, but most kind of companies, dance companies, performing arts companies are starting to bring in experts that kind of psychologists, physiotherapists, strength and conditioning coaches. So if you're interested in that kind of career, I think doing a science at A-level is a really good tester, feeler of, is this going to be right for me?
Sure. Chris, you mentioned the fact that you've been doing some interviews today and and yesterday as well. I mean, are you asking candidates what GCSEs they've got? How important is that to you, and what are the sorts of skills and qualities that you would like to see in someone?
Yeah, GCSEs are important, but within the theatre there is so many roles for people to to come into the theatre. We have costume makers, graphic designers, there's all sorts. Myself, being very dyslexic, from my GCSEs, I struggled with GCSEs at school, but that just gave me more determination. When the teacher said, "Oh, you'll never do anything," that gave me more determination to actually get on with stuff. Our workforce, I would say, from our technical side, is 50% are trained from drama schools to local colleges, to 50% who have learnt on the job and done, extra courses to work alongside their work. So I don't think there's any right path, to get into the technical side of theatre. There's plenty of jobs where you don't need to be formally trained. If people come out of drama school, they still really have to start at the bottom and work their way up, because it's the experience which means more than anything else on the technical side.
Sure. Yeah. Holly, I mean, knowing about the courses the MPAA offer, what would going into a higher education course, so a post-18 course, so after your A-levels or BTEC, what advantages is that going to give you in the industry? I think specifically in dance.
Well, I think it gives you a really strong foundation for longevity. Obviously, you could leave school and audition for a job and book it, and that's great. But I think when you go into higher education training, you're building those blocks up to withstand you for a long period of time and a long career. And what you're exposed to over those 3 years, I'm sure Ben can probably touch on this more, but dance-wise, is that you're exposed to a lot of different styles. Before I went into training for higher education, I'd never studied contemporary dance. I'd only just touched on sort of commercial and street dance. And actually, as I developed through my 3-year course, I found that I had a passion for styles that I'd never experienced before. And if I had missed that part of my training, it wouldn't have made me the choreographer and the creative that I am now, because I wouldn't have had those same experiences. So I think it just gives you a really strong foundation to help you sort of develop into who you are. When you leave school at 16, there's still so much for you to learn, and even sort of as an adult in this career path, you're always learning. So I think it really solidifies things for you.
Sure. Okay.
I think also, Gareth, that at a university level or at a conservatoire, you're working with industry professionals that are actually making theatre and have been in the theatre, so you get that experience firsthand. And also in terms of the connections that the university or the institution might offer to you, in terms of, say, finding an agent or meeting a certain casting director, or all of those things help with the training. As Holly said, of course, you could book a job straight out of wherever you are if you're right for it. But I think for a long-term career, having a good base in education helps you have a more varied career. And what we train also teachers, dance teachers, alongside the degree. So therefore, that gives you a career alongside that as well. So when you're not in a job, you could be teaching dance, or you could be starting your own dance school, another stream of income. So yeah.
Sure. Okay. No, that's a really good consideration. Let's just move on to the prospects for this industry and where we think it's going to go in the future. And really just to reassure people watching this at the moment, and I suspect more particularly their parents, that this is a really good industry to go into. And once we get over COVID particularly, it's a really solid place to go into. So what's the demand for dancers, Holly?
Well, I mean, in most musical theatre shows, there is an ensemble of dancers that are required. Musical theatre is so much more popular now, so people graduating from musical theatre colleges every year has increased by quite a lot. Obviously, depending on the courses that you attend. I mean, MPAA, for example, we have quite a small pool of students that we accept each year into our course, because it's sort of everybody has a fit somewhere within this industry and within the roles that we're all wanting to do, and everyone has an individual journey. So the demand for dancers is really high. The contemporary companies, things like that, you don't always have to be an all-round musical theatre performer. There are so many different roles within the dance world, including choreographers and including teachers, that there's a real need for educators as well.
Sure. Okay. Lucy, from your perspective, some of the more scientific roles, so the psychologist in particular, is that something there's growing demand for?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a relatively new role. I think in the UK there's probably a handful of psychologists that have this particular specialism. But I guess if we look at something like sport as an equivalent, actually about 30 years ago, not everybody had a sports psychologist. But if you look now at the most kind of elite top level performers in sports, they're now consistently employing every kind of scientist under the sun to aid performance. So I think now that we're at kind of a tipping point where people are now really starting to value the role of science, and lots of the kind of larger companies are employing a whole team of scientific experts, which I think probably becomes contagious, because you see that this is really contributing to the development of performance and the strength and the what you see on stage, but also their well-being. And I think as society becomes more interested in well-being more generally, I think the performing arts is embracing that. And I also will say as well that for me personally, I'm in this position where I've been able to walk away from an employed role into being self-employed. That's come because of the heightened awareness around COVID and the challenges that performers have been through over the last year. So I'm optimistic that will be maintained, that moving forwards people will still be interested in talking about mental health and psychological well-being in the performing arts, but I can only see it growing. I mean, mine and Ben's kind of relationship and the way that we work together, that I think is a really good example of the potential for embedding performance psychology into a degree program. And, we'll be able to see what impact does that have on his graduates moving forwards. And I can only hope there's a time that that's the standard thing, that someone in performing arts training has that degree of support. So I personally think it's a great time, a really good time to think about that sort of career. Yeah.
Sure, no, it sounds like a really significant development. Chris, changing the question slightly, I mean, you explained how you left the Northwest and you're now based in London. So as far as performing arts go in this country, do all roads lead to London? Is that where all the big hub is?
No, there is a lot of opportunity in London, but there's a lot of opportunity in most of the cities. And, as a company, we have shows touring all around the UK. I've been very fortunate with my job. I've been all over the world, putting on productions from glamorous places like Australia to South Korea and, all other places. So it's been, no, there is a lot of work in London, but it's not the be all and end all being in London. There's lots, in Scotland, there's lots of exciting stuff happening all over the country, depending on, what sort of theatre you want to get into.
Yeah. I think, Chris, I mean, just going back to the last question about the demand for particular roles within the production side, is it moving more towards technology? Is that more?
We do, there's a lot more projection which is used in the show, but by adding projection, you still need people like graphic designers and video makers to make that, to make the content for the projection, and you still need people to operate the projection. So maybe years gone by, you'd have more people just moving scenery in the wings at the side of the stage, moving scenery on. So those roles have just developed, and now they'll be projection roles or automation roles. But there is a huge demand. There's so many jobs from in the theatre. Like Ben started, for every show that's happening, for 30 people to perform on stage, there's probably 100 people working backstage from 9 o'clock in the morning to make that happen. And that's without even thinking about the workshops and all the suppliers who supply the theatre, from lighting to sound to costume, wardrobe, wigs, medical suppliers. There is so many different roles within the theatre. People who do the drawings as well, so logistics. There's so much. And now there's a new role, if anybody's interested, as a COVID officer, which if you'd like to do that, we have vacancies going all the time.
Then just final question on this section. Then, so I know there's a lot of questions that are coming in, so we want to answer as many of those as we can. Someone who goes into performing arts, what other opportunities does that open, perhaps in other industries afterwards? What sort of transferable skills can someone gain?
Yeah, I am very passionate about transferable skills in the performing arts. First of all, as a performer, you're definitely going to turn up on time, or for most parts, so your timekeeping is excellent. Well, Chris doesn't agree, but certainly at MPAA, or from a performer's point of view, we're very disciplined with timekeeping. Most people will be very comfortable around people, and they'd have good interpersonal skills and very good customer-facing roles, because they deal with people all the time, and they're very comfortable in their own skin. The other thing is that they probably can pick up things well quite a lot. So if they're shown something, they will remember it quite quickly, because that's what you do with routines and singing, etc. So I think there's a lot of those transferable skills. And obviously, I don't know, from a technical point of view, I'm sure that across departments, people tend to swap from one thing to the other. So
yeah, there's so much in the technical side. You know, we have carpenters who, yes, they can build scenery, but if there's no work within the theatre, they can go and do domestic work, film work, festival work. There is so much, you know, and on the graphic design, they can go and work for an agency making posters when they're not working with designers. So yeah, it's there's so much transferable skills.
Sure, no, it definitely sounds like it. And Lucy, you're an absolute case in point there, where you've transferred your initial skills and passion for dance into something very, very different, which is helping the industry as well. Okay, well, look, we want to take your questions now. So there's some that have been submitted already. If you have any questions that you want to ask to any of the panelists, please type them in via the questions tab. So they're only visible to me, and then I will direct them through. So you've got about, so if you can get your questions in the next 5 minutes, then we can make sure we get these all answered in time. So first one that's come in, well, Ben, if you tell me who you think would be most appropriate to answer this, it may be you. Musical theatre is a newfound passion of mine. Would it impact my experience in this industry? And is there anything to do or get involved in to gain more knowledge and experience?
I think, as I said before, I think any opportunity to perform or to do things online, whether it's in your school, in your local community, in an Amdram production, maybe in a semi-professional production, your dance school show, if you can get into a dance school, touch in with us. We always have sort of need for people to be around us during production time, etc. So you could come and, observe. Yeah, so just get involved in anything and everything you can. It will really pay off in the end.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Anyone else wanted to add anything to that, or has Ben covered that answer very well?
Yeah, I think like Ben says, getting involved with any youth theatres or amateur dramatic theatres, if you're interested in the technical side, that's where, most of us start off, and, then you can, one show do the lighting, next show do props, next show do stage management. And by the end of a couple of years, you'll know which one you enjoy the most and which one you'd like to take further into your career.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Well, I hope that answers that question. If you do have a follow-up one, do drop it into the chat now, and we'll do our best to answer that one. Next one, very polite one from Zach. So he says, I'm currently 16. I've been told that now is the best time to look for an agent, as I'm cheaper to employ, so therefore have a better chance at getting work. I've looked around but can't work out the best way to find a good agent. So my question would be, how do you find a good agent, and what do you look for to know they are a good one? What a great question. Ben, where do we go with that one?
Wow, that's a big question. So I would say, in terms of an agent, yes, if you want to get jobs in the performing arts at age 16, I'm assuming that you have done some kind of training. So I would start off by Googling children's agents or agents that deal with 16 plus, and then look at their clients and see if any of their clients have a career that you aspire to, or if they're putting their clients in shows or TV series or commercials that you want to be a part of. And that will give you an idea of what the agency is like and whether it's right for you. Spotlight is a very good place to find a list of agents, etc., and they will be very helpful if you're unsure about a particular agent. They will definitely give you a recommendation in terms of whether that agency is legit, etc. But I think keep looking and meet them, and it's a two-way process. That's what I would say.
Sure. And Ben, did you say that was Spotlight? Is that what you should Google? How would you?
Yes, Spotlight. So Spotlight is a portal that helps casting directors, agents, and actors to all come together and it's where if you did get an agent, you would upload your electronic CV that will then be sent on to casting directors, etc. If you wanted to be in a show or a commercial or a TV thing, and Spotlight keep a list of agents, and there's also Equity, the Actors Union, that also provides advice on agents, etc.
Okay.
So great question, Zach.
Yeah, very much so. Holly, have you had any experiences of agents?
Yes, so in my performing arts training, in your third year of college, you have what is known normally as an agent showcase, where you are exposed to different agents and you can meet with them afterwards to sort of, like Ben was saying, try and find the right fit for you and the right agent that you think that you're going to have a great bond with. Within commercial dance, you can have normally various agents, so you would maybe be under different agencies depending on the type of work that you're doing. So some different commercial agencies might put you up for tours, others might be sort of putting you forward for music videos and things like that. So within the commercial dance industry, you can have, it's acceptable to have more than one agent for a lot of performers.
Sure. Okay, going to move the question on, and Lucy, I'm going to ask you this question actually, but others may have opinions as well. So the question is, hi, I'm Holly. I've been performing since I was 3, and I've always wanted to be on the West End. Recently, I've started to lose my passion for performing due to the virus and everything being online. Do you ever regret choosing to follow the musical theatre path?
Well, I can give some advice on that one as a psychologist, which is, and reassure Holly that that's probably, I'd say 50% of the people that I've supported over the last year have said something really similar to me. So I guess my advice for Holly is just to know that that is a quite normal reaction to what's happened over the last year. As for the second part of it, I'm not sure that I can answer that. Maybe it's best if Holly or Ben answers that. I had that one over.
Yeah,
sure.
I just want to say, obviously I'm very biased, but I think the musical theatre industry is one of the best industries around, just because of, as Chris said before, the variety of people that you meet and the variety of opportunities that are presented to you, to travel the world and to meet different people, but also the community that is around you. And I think stick with it. If you have a passion inside you, just remember that every situation is temporary, and that, you know, what you might be feeling now is not what you might be feeling when you land the job or when you get an audition, etc. It is a roller coaster ride, but so is most of life. And I think surround yourself with a good support network and reach out to people like us. We're always very happy to help, and especially when times are a bit tough, your support network is really important. But I think the musical theatre industry is just great. I mean, you know, I like the front part, the back parts kind of thing. There's so many things: film, theatre, TV. Yeah, keep at it and good luck.
Sure. Okay. Next question. I think this one will probably be one for Chris actually, but Ben, tell me if you think it's best taken elsewhere. Do you think it is possible to break into the industry as a creative writer or director, or is this a step that a performer accesses later in life?
No, I think you can. If you're good at what you do, you can break in straight away as a creative, you know, a creative writer. I think if you've got some good product and you meet the right producers, yeah, I don't think you have to go and be a performer to become a creative person. No, I think you can go straight for it.
Sure.
I think one great example of that is the musical Six. I think, you know, starting from an Edinburgh show, two very new writers eventually had their sort of West End debut, and now kind of are internationally, you know, the show has gone international, Australia, Broadway, etc. So yeah, it's never too late, and certainly anyone can break into it.
Sure. I mean, what might be the path that someone would take, Ben, if they wanted to become a, you know, director or a writer? Is it very, very different route to the ones that you know, Holly and Lucy would have taken, or how many writers and directors have been performers first?
I think it's again a mixture, and going back to what Chris said, my personal, and this is my own opinion, it's really nice to buddy up with someone who's doing it already. So maybe to volunteer or to intern alongside the director or alongside a creative, and to be around them, to see how they work, to see what they do. And I think that just being in the room really teaches you a lot about the process, but also might introduce you to certain people that will give you your first opportunity, etc. In terms of performers being creatives, yes, I think there is a natural progression. I think we often see performers become choreographers or performers become directors. I think, I don't know, Chris, whether you agree, but sometimes performers really go onto the technical side of theatre too, or work, I mean, you know, where their experience is invaluable.
Yeah, we have a number of performers who are working on the stage crew in a number of our shows, and I think it's just important, you know, because people have the passion for the industry, and if they're around the industry, they hear about jobs. And again, we'll have technicians who may take a job in a theatre which isn't quite what they want to do long term, but by just being around people, they hear about jobs, and you know, that's the way to keep in the business, because not all jobs are advertised, you know, because you know things move quickly. You know, if we're doing a technical rehearsal and we think we need 4 stage crew, and then when we come to do it, because everything is a prototype, we need 5. If there's somebody who's working front of house who's already done a bit of backstage work, we might reach out for them to come and help us. So I think if it's an industry you're interested in, sometimes it's worth taking a job which is not quite your final aim, but worth still being in the industry.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Next question. We're just getting close to 5 o'clock. So is it better to do a general degree, brackets, traditional close brackets, at uni, or attend drama school? Ben, who do you think should answer this one?
Me? I think you should do both. I think there are performing arts degrees now, and I think technical theatre degrees that are very practically based. So the degree, for example, at MPAA is 80% practical and 20% written, and you're doing more than you're writing. So I think there's a blend with the two, and I think most really good conservatoires now are offering a very vocational based degree course. I don't know on the technical side, Chris.
There is some great technical courses out there. You know, don't get me wrong, there's some great ones. But if you know, if writing and academic stuff is not your forte, don't be frightened off by the industry. You know, there's so many people and there's so many avenues within this industry to get in. You know, it's not a be all and end all having a degree to work in theatre. You know, like I say, there's some, because I do a lot of talks with drama schools, you know, and I think, you know, I'm not going to say to them they're doing the wrong thing. There's not the right or wrong path into technical theatre. It's the path which you think's right for you, which and for you to succeed in. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then final question that's been submitted, perhaps similar to the last one. Is it better to do A-level drama or go to a musical theatre college when wanting to be a performer? So Ben, let me give you first tips on that one again.
I think it depends. If you're doing A-level drama in a sixth form college that has a good performing arts background, etc., and that you're actually doing performing, like you're actually performing, great. But if you're saying, do I go to you know, a performing arts school at 16 as opposed to kind of going to sixth form, I would say you need to find what's right for you, because sometimes 16-year-olds are really ready to train and they've got, you know, that mental capacity to move away from home and really take on a 3-year intensive training. Or sometimes you need those 2 years to get your A-levels, to get, in a way, like a backup plan or that academic background to then get onto a university course where also you're emotionally ready to maybe move away from home or have that, you know, for example, a typical day at MPAA is 8 a.m. till sometimes 6, 7, 8, 9 p.m. So, you know, you're training for 12 hours and there's a lot of, there's a lot to do. So I hope that answered it.
Sure. Okay. And then another question, it's a follow-up question. She's asked so politely as Rosie that I will definitely put this one in there as well. Do you think it's possible to pursue both performing and the creative side of theatre at the same time?
Chris, I can't think of an example at the moment.
What, performing and being on the creative side? Yeah. I think there's plenty of people who, you know, start as performers or work as performers and then will go and, you know, do, I can never say the word choreography of a show, you know, and then on again from a technical point of view, we'll have people who are lighting technicians and then we'll go and do a lighting design and come back. So yes, I think definitely, I think you can work hand in hand, and I think it's a good way, because if you're not getting so much work creatively, you've got some money coming in by doing, you know, performing job, and vice versa. So I think it goes hand in hand with both of those roles.
Okay, thank you very much. So those were all the questions that have come in. So thanks so much for sending those questions, and I really hope they've been very useful for you. So just in conclusion, we're going to display for you some websites that you may want to be aware of, or you may want to go and have a look at. So Ben, perhaps if you could talk about the first couple on there, and then between Lucy and Holly, you might be able to discuss the other ones which are specifically around dancing. So Ben, over to you.
Yeah, so MPAA is, as I said, the website of our university course, our BA Honours in Musical Theatre Performance. The second is a guide that I wrote, which gives you tips and tricks about auditioning for musical theatre colleges or conservatoires. It's got a huge range of repertoire for singing, monologues, etc. So it's a really good resource, and also gives you a bit of hints and tips about what to do in the room, etc. I will say that both those have a contact form. Please do get in touch with us if you need to ask any further questions. We're always happy to help. And then if you're considering going to drama school, the next one is the Federation of Drama Schools. And there's a group of institutions that offer vocational training in theatre, which is really worth checking out. So I'll pass the next one on to Holly.
Yeah, great. So the Imperial Society of Teachers of Dancing, or the ISTD as it's normally known in short, they are a body that offer teacher training programs for dancers. So you can train in tap, ballet, commercial dance, modern, and what this offers you is a course where you would train you either over a 3-year period, or some courses a 1-year period, to gain teaching qualifications. So if you're interested in going into dance schools or colleges, it gives you that additional support to say, I have trained specifically in becoming a teacher.
Okay, fine. So those websites, and then Spotlight was the other one that you mentioned earlier, Ben. I think it's really important, actually. Let's just mention that one again if anyone's looking. Yeah,
Spotlight. And also, I don't know if there's anything from a technical theatre point of view, Chris, that might be a good resource.
ABTT is the society is worth it as well. They've got plenty of literature on there, and different courses and online stuff. It's well worth having a look at.
Okay.
ABTT, Pete.
Yeah.
And then I'll take the one before the last, which is One Dance UK, which is the body of dance for the UK, and there's lots of resources there about mental well-being, and also becoming a dancer, choreographer. There's also the choreographer's directory there, so if you were looking at internships, etc., you might want to work alongside someone. They also have fantastic resources about events, and they've got a U-Dance Festival coming up shortly, so that's really great webinars, a really good resource. Lucy?
Yeah, and then the bottom one is just my website. Again, please feel free if you're interested in any of the careers kind of that combine the performing arts with science. I also have previously taught on degrees in dance science, which is a possibility as well for anyone who's interested in pursuing technical dance training and the scientific side of things. So if you think that could be an option for you, please feel free to use the contact form on there to drop me a message to find out about this combination of kind of technical training and science. I can definitely help if anyone's interested in that pathway.
Okay, thank you very much. And look, we couldn't do a webinar about the performing arts without there being an encore question as well. Now, this is mine. I think it's a very stupid question, but I'm going to ask you, Holly. Is there an infinite amount of dance routines that there are out there, or is one day a choreographer going to decide there's no other way of putting these dances together?
No, I think things are always developing and growing, and there's always new inspirations, and I think that people will be creating until the end of time, and everyone has their own individual way and style, and yeah, I think it will go on long after we're all gone.
Good, thank you for answering that one so succinctly. So finally, just for those of you that are watching this session live, the QR code you can see on your screen at the moment, that will take you directly to our page on the HOP website, which I mentioned at the start of the webinar. And this will take you to all the previous webinars that we've done. So we've run a different webinar each week looking at a slightly different industry. And there are some that will be related to this one. So if Lucy has really inspired you, we did a webinar specifically about careers in psychology, probably about a month, 6 weeks ago. So you may want to go back and have a look at that one as well. We did one about this time last year on media and film production with some of our colleagues from Warner Brothers Studios down in Leavesden near Watford, who we've referenced as well on this webinar as well. So please do have a look at that. Please generally, for any information that you want to find out about careers, do have a look at our HOP website and use our social media channels, which you can see on your screen as well. So just in conclusion, firstly, let me thank those of you in our live audience at the moment for taking the time out of your day to come on and interact and ask some really, really fantastic questions that I'm sure lots of other people wanted to know the answer to as well. Thank you also to those of you that have been watching this as a recording, but mostly let me thank my panelists for giving up their time, not only today, but in the preparation for this session, and for really setting the scene, I think, for you, for what the performing arts industry is and the different roles in it. So to Lucy, to Holly, to Chris and Ben, thanks ever so much for giving up your time, for being real stars for us today. If you want to give us, I don't know, a group bow or whatever you used to do at the end of a show. Thank you, Chris. You've rehearsed that, Chris, haven't you?
Thank you.
So thanks ever so much for watching. We really hope you found this webinar useful, and the best of luck to all of you in your pursuits of a career in the performing arts industry, or indeed any other industry. Thank you for watching. Bye.